your body will kick it out of the system.
Yeah.
When I was sick, I had to drag myself to work, and I swore when I retired, I would go to bed if I didn't feel good, and I have ever since then.
Well, I was talking to Mary Hopeman about Granny Clampett's cure. You used to watch Beverly Hillbillies?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Beverly, I remember.
Yeah, she opened up.
Moonshine?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. She opened up a doctor's office in the bank, and that was her elixir, the cure. And this doctor was having a fit because he just knew it was hokum, you know.
Yeah.
So finally, he gets the real bad cold. He goes in, okay, I'm willing to try it. So he takes a swig of it. And he goes, now what? She said, all right, go home and get plenty of rest and drink plenty of water for 7 days, and you'll be good as rabbit.
It is so true, though.
Yeah, that's what it boils down to in most cases.
You know, when you go into a home and you look at a medicine chest, no wonder we're sick.
The only thing I take right now is cholesterol medication.
Yeah.
That's it.
We do supplements, and if we get something like allergies, we'll do that to mitigate the stuff. But
You ever heard of Zeal? It's like a power-packed vitamin, but it's a powder you put in, you shake it up. In 4 ounces of water, you shake it into that.
and that's it.
I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I've lost quite a bit of weight.
You have to tell me more about that.
Yeah.
You haven't run off the rosters?
Hopefully, they're on the printer now. Let me see.
Go shopping.
We go through, well, it's so funny. The healthy me goes and gets groceries, and then the fat me is looking for a snack later.
I know my computer prints to the new copier because he did the test on it. I don't know why it didn't.
Well, the thing is I eat so much less. Like when I sit down to eat, I made my norm, like the other morning. You know how you get in a routine, you make a certain amount because you know that's what you were eating?
Yeah.
I didn't even eat. I ate probably a third of what was on the plate, and my stomach was like, and that's what I'm telling myself. When I say I'm full, you know,
Yeah.
I can feel that little bulge, I stop eating. So Malami can eat the rest of it.
That's what you used to do.
Yeah, it used to be me.
Everybody
She,
ate.
and she can't get herself motivated to stop eating, and she's put on a lot of weight.
Sure is.
She has. I don't say anything, so you know.
Yeah.
That could be my death sentence.
Yeah. You don't want that to happen.
Nope. Good to see you, Dale.
Good to see you, Jim.
And I've really enjoyed this class. I know I'm behind a little bit, but I'll get caught up.
Well, we'll try to get you caught up.
I'll be gone Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then
Where will you be?
Kansas City.
Good old Kansas City.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the stories about their barbecue is absolutely true.
Oh, yeah.
They've got some
I can't-
excellent barbecue.
We lived in Overland Park for a while, and I cannot remember the name of the place. They don't have any air conditioning. They just have
Overland
fans.
Park.
No, this is up in downtown Kansas City.
Yeah.
On the Missouri
I
side.
just was there. I was in Overland Park.
Oh, yeah.
And I stayed there for 4 days.
Well, it's
beautiful
changed.
over there.
I used to preach in Olathe.
Really?
Yeah. But we lived in Overland Park. Hello, Isaac. And but anyway, this barbecue place, all the presidents go to this place, and it's a black family that owns it, and it is the best barbecue in the world. The building is just a rundown building, got a screen door on the front and fans, no air conditioning. You go in there through the line and everything, and I've eaten there a couple of times. Just a great place.
Yeah.
Then there was this Jewish deli that I always went to.
You think it's still there?
It's still there. In fact, the lady that owned it, she was actually in the Holocaust. She was a little girl, and she used to tell me stories about what the Germans would do and everything. Said they were loaded up in a truck going to the gas chamber, and she tried to talk everybody into jumping off that truck. She says, "You know where we're going," and nobody would jump off, but she jumped off and she made it.
Good for her.
And her and her
Understood
husband.
that. One person out of a truckload
Yeah.
understood it.
Yeah.
Did something about it.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die.
Well, she said they were in line one day and said this German soldier was smoking this cigarette, and he took and put the cigarette out on her dad's hand, And she said to the German soldier, says, "You know better than that." But, I mean, that was just a little girl talking.
Right.
But she came to the United States, got married, had children and everything, made this, I don't know if she bought it or created this Jewish deli. And I'll tell you what, the pastries was just out of this world.
Oh, man, it's still there. You got to tell me where.
Well,
love going to the delis because you find the different sausages and hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's one place in California called Alpine, and they make Alpine hot dogs.
Yeah.
Good.
They are
I
amazing.
know she's passed away now because, I mean, I was there, well, I'm 75. I guess I was about 30 when I was there, so I know she's passed away. But she had a young black girl that worked for her, and her husband ended up buying that deli and continued to run it just like,
Oh, it would be awesome if they
Yeah.
kept that legacy alive for her. You know?
oh, yeah, yeah. So, hello, Glenda. I better go out there and find out if I have any announcements. I've only got a whole page full already. But
Oh, well, you may have already talked to Ron, but they took Carla out of ICU.
yeah, I talked to him yesterday.
Okay.
What's what we doing today?
I have to work. I'm trying to find the leak on that skid.
Oh,
We got it cleaned. You should see it looks like a brand new skid. Yeah, it's sitting on the side yard. Everyone goes, "Oh, did you buy that from Conrad?" I go, "No." I go, "But I've been using it." You know. So now I have to use it. The amount of dirt that came off the radiator was staggering, which means I told Conrad, I go, "This is not cooling down the way that it should. There's a fan that's above that will help circulate." We cleaned that so packed inside the engine plus
How are you?
the tracks will happen as soon as we get into the
morning, morning. Good
morning.
But anybody that uses it doesn't clear it.
How are you doing?
So that's what going around was
All right.
we spent almost 4.5 hours because of pressure, but we just kept handing it off. We went through 4 tanks of fuel. Pressure.
I don't know if anybody's gonna be here this
When I would get
morning.
I'd hand it to
Up
Ron,
front,
it would go
there's
back
hardly
and forth.
nobody out
And it's
there.
never ending. So we unbolted and we tilted the whole cab. So we cleaned it.
Everybody with all the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, still COVID. So, yeah.
The only thing we didn't do is we declared.
Why is it coming down? I
It's just
know.
never that bad.
He says, "I guarantee you."
It's
that
just
much
gonna-
will
It's
move."
mutating.
Caked on. I go, "Well, once we figure out what the heck it is, let's pull those pins off." And we went to a
Waiting to
counter
get it in.
and slammed it.
Don't you do that.
And then I can slide it
I
on.
hope not.
The pressure wash that off. Do the pressure wash. So it all flows through.
So glad that I worked in a warehouse on a couple people, so I'm really fortunate.
Really?
And to go around
You're supposed to put
the
grease
mass
all the way
population on the,
You don't?
only when I do deliveries, you know, that's
Which
it.
is
Yeah.
well, at least once a week. Because you want to have
Folks and a lot of people.
you know, you could be,
Right.
well, depending on what you're doing, you could be running it all day. But, and I know the entire time I have it.
I don't go to church.
I finally greased it.
It's a church.
And now that I've.
You just go to church. Huh? Well, it looks like
So
that.
they're gonna get it out and try to find out because
Yeah.
he goes, "My luck, it's gonna be the longest times, which means we have to go through and
Oh,
you know,
I
and
think
it's the most expensive.
he's going
house.
to Philadelphia.
Let's get it
Oh,
done.
yeah?
I wouldn't want to tell you, but
Okay.
He will let me resign anytime because he says he comes back.
Probably going to learn some more stuff, probably.
You can go listen to me.
No.
Never does. But anyway, he's
for all the
fine.
kids, you know.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Christmas.
Actually, I still think it's really boring.
You know,
Boy, he is
romance
to you.
worse than it's what
He
it
is
is.
to me,
I'm a little boy to you, Pat.
I used to love it when I was
yeah. I
young.
know
I
it.
loved
You
it.
know, you know. And I
It's a waste
probably
of time.
trying to get my head off.
I wonder what happened to the store. Gotta wait and see when somebody comes outside the house.
They probably got rid of it.
I think so. Because the last time I heard it, I just
She's going to visit.
they had
Oh,
people.
I remember. They're his friend,
I don't know
huh?
if they had
Yeah.
any cooling in it.
And she's gonna hook him up with a blind date too, right?
Yeah, they said that, but hopefully they were fixing it, but maybe not, I don't know. I told him, watch out.
He's of age, so.
I know, he's a young guy.
Pushing air up and out.
Would you probably-
He asked me that, he said, you don't know who I am?
I mean, I may want to put 2 or 3 of them in there so that it just moves. You know, I'm gonna set it for, and
He
it's
says, how
set
old are
for
you?
7 p.m.
I'm not.
Turn it on for an hour. Because I pull all that outside air. in.
I told him.
Right.
My
He
AC.
said, you need to get out
I'm
more.
gonna try and water my
Yeah, tell him how, tell me.
Yeah, I'll do that. He says, I ought to come get you more.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You do it in
I
the
don't
morning.
think way.
There you go.
but he wants to take me to
He's
church.
supposed to have said it, but I
Yeah,
can't
well,
tell. That's one thing I
no.
could never sit off. But that's just little
I said,
things,
well,
you
I
know.
go to church.
Is it brush
Okay.
day?
Can't you find
It's
somewhere else
starting
to go?
He tried.
I looked over the fence in their yard and it's
Yeah.
they've
I
made
don't
such a
know.
mess of their
I
yard.
don't
There's
know.
nothing in it at all. They put
It's
a
so-
makeshift garden. But it looks so junky. I
Takes
looked
you
behind
right
it. There's
place.
nothing there. But it's neat.
Tell him we can always come get you and you guys go out and get a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Drink a pot of coffee.
I said, yeah, I'll do.
Your backyard.
Yeah, I told him, sure, I'll do that.
Let's go sit down somewhere and say, just a little
Wheel
pot
backs.
over here in a
You
minute.
don't, you spread them, then you take a rake and you push it on level, and you do that with the whole wheel. And eventually, you don't do it again.
Yeah, I heard it in here, it's time to
Just take
start.
the backside of the rake and you just.
But I decided, I don't put money, I put enough money in the house. There's things I want to finish, like the drapes and the family. I'm gonna get up and do myself, but I don't have a metal saw to cut the,
Yep. All right.
Good morning.
I'm holding up a dollar.
Dime on the dollar. Let me think on that.
Hello.
We're going to be missing some folks this morning. I'm not sure about the Carters and everything. I know Chuck is really struggling with his health, but we have a lot of folks that are out with COVID. And that's why I sent that message out yesterday. Because I know that there might be a few folks that aren't coming today because they're concerned about the COVID. But you know, we can use our own opinion. Some people think it's just a government thing. Some people think it's just a virus. All I know is if it's time for me to go, it's time for me to go.
amen.
And I'd rather be here worshiping God. So I'm here. Anyway, Florence is teaching because my daughter has COVID, so she's not here in the class this morning. And I'm not sure about Donna Hardis. I know they struggle a lot, so they may not have come because of the COVID. So, but we have so many people with COVID, I'm not even going to start trying to name them all. We'll just try to, I'll announce them in the announcements, but we'll try to remember.
Chris had it also?
Well, here's what I think. Because Stephanie started having symptoms Wednesday. And of course, she's going through this training with Sprint and everything, which prevents her from coming on Wednesday nights right now because they've told her that she absolutely cannot miss the training. And she started having symptoms, so she went and got tested, and it was negative. Well, then Friday she has a sore throat, and she's got a little fever, so she goes and gets tested. Now she's positive for COVID, but she also has strep throat. And the Sharbers. I mean, Marilyn got it. She finally had the IMSA take her to the ER, and they prescribed Paxlovid for her. which is the pill that Pfizer's developed and everything. They give them 3 pills is what it is. And she goes home. She doesn't call anybody. So Florence is talking to her the next day, and she said, well, I wasn't able to go get the prescription. So I went and I got the prescription for her, took it to her house. Well, the next day, Daryl comes down with it. So, or no, that day I took the medicine to her. Daryl came down with it. So I told her then, I says, look at the name here. You call his doctor and tell him that you had it and Daryl's come down with it. Would he write this prescription? Well, he did. So I picked that up for her yesterday and took it. But Daryl's really having a tough time with it. And part of that may be because he had a stroke and everything a few years ago, and so his health is not good. But most people, I mean, you look at like the Locks and you look at the Essingtons, you look at John Vincent, the Lius, even Rhonda Duvall. I mean, we went to that party out at the Hoagland's Friday night. She was fine, but then yesterday morning she started having some symptoms, so she's home today. And she's tested negative so far. But another day or two she may test positive. It's just a different kind of strain with this COVID. The doctors are saying it's a milder strain, so basically they're not hospitalizing anybody at this point. So it's just a strange deal.
Does anybody get the flu anymore?
Well, you know, that's the thing. The flu is a virus. And yes, to answer your question, Nola, there's already been 1 death here in Oklahoma due to the West Nile virus.
Oh.
So, I
I
mean,
haven't heard that one in a while.
yeah. Well, summertime is when the mosquitoes start carrying West Nile, and so there has been 1 death here in Oklahoma with
Don't forget monkeypox.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, everybody I've talked to that
You know.
everybody I've talked to that have gone to the doctor and everything, the feedback came back that, well, you are to quarantine yourself from 5 days from the day of your symptoms, and then after that, if you get out, you wear a mask for 5 days. So a total of 10 days, basically, is what they're telling them. But they're sending everybody home. So, anyway, let's go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. Our most loving Heavenly Father, we are truly thankful for this beautiful Lord's Day and for the many blessings you've given us, especially the spiritual blessings and the promise of everlasting life if we'll be faithful to Thee. We're thankful, Father, for your Son who loved us enough to suffer and die on that cross for our sins. And we ask that you would forgive us of our many sins, as we recognize as humans that we do fall short of your glory from time to time. And we ask that you would strengthen us that we might overcome the temptations that Satan puts before us. We have a number of folks, Father, who are suffering from various illnesses, and we ask that you would be with them, that they might be restored to their health, that they can return and be with us in the very near future and continue to be an encouragement to us, and that we might all strive to grow spiritually, and with that spiritual growth would be numerical growth. We ask, Father, that you would be with us as we continue our study in the book of Revelation, that we might have a full understanding of how it applies to us this day. These things we ask in Jesus Christ's holy name. Amen. Then I might mention also Judy Cross. She's been suffering from her rheumatoid arthritis, but now she has shingles on top of that. So there's various problems. Anyway, what I want to talk about today is you go back to chapter 8 of Revelation, verse 13. And Glenda brought this question up last week, and I promised that I would research it and see what I could find out. But in Revelation chapter 8 and verse 13, and I'm reading from the New King James Version, it says, "And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe to the inhabitants, woe, 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 3 woes, to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound." There are 3 versions that use the word eagle instead of angel. That's the ESV, the American Standard, and the Revised Version. And
New American Standard also.
New American Standard also. Okay. Well, that figures since American Standard has it. King James and New King James uses the word angel. So what's the difference? In many of the older manuscripts, the word eagle is found, and that's why some versions use the word eagle. Eagle is chosen to add fresh terror to the picture. And if you really think about that, 3 woes, that is significant terror, okay? So it doesn't matter whether the version is using angel or eagle. An eagle is a symbol of judgment. Turn your Bibles to Hosea, the 8th chapter, and verse 1. And Madison, if you have that, I'll let you read that.
Just the first verse.
Yeah, if you need to read a couple, that's okay. But verse 1 is what I really want.
Okay. Set the trumpet to your lips. One like a vulture is over the house of the Lord, because they have transgressed my covenant and rebelled against my law.
Okay, so that version uses the word vulture. Many versions uses the word eagle. Okay,
This version is the ESV.
it's what?
The ESV.
Okay, ESV.
Did you say Hosea chapter 1?
Yes, chapter 8, verse 1.
Verse 1. Okay. No wonder it wouldn't say.
No wonder it didn't fit. And if you go back to Revelation chapter 4 and verse 7, remember the 4th living creature here. Glenda, you had that?
The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like a calf, the third living creature had a face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle.
Okay. Now remember what I'm saying is the eagle is a symbol of judgment, okay? And that's what you see there in Revelation chapter 4. Now another verse we want to look at is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 49. Nola, if you have that, and Jim, if you'll turn to Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 8.
28.
Deuteronomy 28 verse 49.
Okay. The Lord will bring a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth. As the eagle swoops down, a nation whose language you shall not understand.
Okay. So here again, you see that symbol of judgment there with the use of the eagle. All right, Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 8.
Their horses are swifter than cheetahs and fiercer than wolves at dusk. There on they come, all bent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert.
Okay. And one of the previous verses and everything mentions the eagle there. But again, you see the judgment mentioned here. So the eagle is flying where all can see and crying so all can hear. Angel or eagle is a swift messenger of fearful tidings that was sent by God unto the church. So it really doesn't matter whether the version you're reading uses the word angel or eagle here. The idea is the swift destruction, the judgment that's going to take place. Okay? Well, I appreciate those questions, those challenges to look those things up, and just as the Bereans searched the scriptures daily to make sure what they were teaching was, or what was being taught was correct. It challenges me too, and I appreciate that. So, yes, Noah.
One thing that helps, I have a set of books that have 6 versions. So when I'm studying, I can look and see words that are being used. And that helps because it varies so much.
Yeah. Well, and I use Strong's Analytical Concordance. I use Cruden's. Those are a couple of good books for that. And the Smith Bible Dictionary is a good one as well that I use a lot, just to look at various words to see what they mean. And I have a Greek concordance as well, and I can look at that. But I'm one of these individuals. Some preachers like to use Greek words and everything, and I think they really do it to try to impress people, but it doesn't impress me at all because I don't read Greek and I don't understand Greek, and I'd rather speak English. So you'll find that very seldom will I mention the exact Greek word. I might tell you what that means, but I won't tell you the Greek word because generally you don't know what it is, and I don't know what it is. So, all right, let's look at chapter 9. And what we see here, we're going to look at the fifth trumpet now. Remember, 7 seals, chapter 4, 1 through chapter 8, verse 5. And now we're looking at the trumpets. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is the fallen star in verses 1 and 2 of chapter 9.
Who? Want me to read it?
Yeah, did we answer the questions on chapter 8?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let's answer those real quick then. Question number 1. What is first mentioned at the opening of the seventh seal?
Empire of South falls.
Okay. To whom were the 7 trumpets given?
7 angels are standing before God.
All right. What happened when the angel cast fire upon the earth?
Moses, thundering, lightnings, and earthquake.
What was offered with the incense upon the golden altar?
Prayers of the saints.
Okay. What followed when the first angel sounded? Okay. What was cast into the sea when the second trumpet sounded?
Huge mountain, all ablaze.
Okay. What was the name of the star which fell when the third trumpet was sounded? The third part of what was smitten when the fourth trumpet was sounded?
Sun, moon, and stars.
What different bodies of God's universe were affected when the 4 trumpets were sounded?
Sun, moon, and stars.
Why was the angel saying, "Woe, woe, woe" to the inhabitants of the earth?
Blessed remaining 3 trumpets.
Okay. True or false? Only 7 angels are mentioned in Revelation chapter 8.
True.
False.
Which is it now?
Only 7 angels.
I got true, but I didn't
I thought there was, there's one extra, wasn't there?
Yeah. It's false. But if you want to put true, I won't argue. The angel took a censer and filled it with fire of the altar.
True.
True. Men are pictured as dying because the waters were made bitter. True. Ships were destroyed when the second trumpet was sounded. 5 trumpets are sounded in Revelation chapter 8.
False.
Okay. From Numbers 10, verses 1 through 10, and Joel 2, verse 1 and verse 15 give a general description of the use of trumpets.
calling the congregation, directing movement of tents, and a warning alarm. That's it.
Okay. And we'll not talk about the thought question there, but there are at least 2 verses which give assurance God will hear the prayers of saints. What verses did you get?
John 5:15, 1 Peter 3:12, 1 John 5:15.
Okay. You could have also listed James chapter 5, verses 15 and 16, Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, and Acts 10, verse 31. So the question said there were at least 2, but there's actually more than 2. All right. So now let's go to chapter 9. And Isaac, read verses 1 and 2 for me.
And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. And to him was given a key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit.
Okay, this star that falls was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. The pit is literally the abyss. So we immediately want to know who this star is that has fallen from heaven. Notice that the star is called a him. Okay? A single star falling from the sky to the earth is a common picture in scriptures of a mighty king or ruler. Isaiah 14, let me see if I've got that up there. Here we go. Now we got it. Isaiah 14 and verse 12. I didn't have that up there, Wanda, so I'll give you a moment to turn to it. And I'll also ask you to read verse 4 as well, verse 12 and verse 4. Chapter 14, verse 12.
Verse 12.
Yeah, just read verse 12 for a moment.
How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn, you have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations.
All right. Now, depending on which version you are using, some versions will use the word Lucifer. Who was Lucifer? You think so? Let's read verse 4.
I have King of Babylon written down.
And you are correct. Read verse 4.
Verse 4 of
Chapter 14, verse 4.
14. You will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon.
And say,
Oh, how the oppressed has come to an end, how his fury has ended.
so Isaiah was prophesying against the king of Babylon. So you hear a lot of religions use that name Lucifer and say that's the devil. But if you read the whole text of chapter 14, you see that it's talking about Babylon, not about Satan. Okay? So Revelation uses similar imagery in Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 through 9. Pat, you want to read that? Do I have that up there? Yeah. Revelation 12, verses 7 through 9.
War broke out in heaven. Michael and his archangels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, and the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceived the whole world, he was cast to the earth, and the angels were cast out with him.
Okay, now here in Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 through 9, it shows Satan and his angels being thrown down to the earth. But that doesn't equate to Isaiah, because Isaiah is talking about the king of Babylon. Look at Luke chapter 10 and verses 17 and 18, Jack.
Then the 70 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven.
Okay. This is Jesus using the same imagery as we saw in Isaiah and in Revelation chapter 12. In all of these cases, the imagery symbolizes a mighty king or ruler losing his power to some degree, if not completely. We will learn who this king is in verse 11 of chapter 9, because we get to the description of who is causing this trouble. We are going to learn the devastation that comes from this judgment. The fallen star opens the shaft of the abyss, and billows of smoke come out of the shaft and darken the sun. The darkening of the sun represents the doom and destruction of a nation. Smoke also represents divine judgment. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah used the same language. If you go back to Genesis chapter 19 and verse 28. You had that, Madison?
And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward
all the land of the valley. And he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace.
So again, smoke represents divine judgment. All right. Now let's look at verses 3 through 6 of chapter 9. Glenda?
Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green thing, or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man.
In verse 6 also.
In those days men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them.
So with the abyss then, with it being open and the smoke rising, John sees locusts coming from the smoke. We know that these locusts are symbolic for something, because the locusts are told not to harm the grass, any green plant or tree, or those who have the seal of God on their foreheads. All of us are familiar with locusts. We think of grasshoppers oftentimes. And if you've ever been with an infestation of grasshoppers or locusts, they completely wipe out a crop. They destroy plants, they destroy grass, and they destroy trees. The locusts then are symbolic, and locusts are used as a symbol in the Old Testament. Go to Joel, the 1st chapter, and look at verses 4 through 7. Nola, you had that?
I do. What the gnawing locust has left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust has left, the creeping locust has eaten. And what the creeping locust has left, the stripping locust has eaten. Awake, drunkards, and weep and wail, all you who drink, wine drinkers, on account of the sweet wine that is cut off from your mouth. For a nation has invaded my land, mighty and without number. Its teeth is the teeth of a lion, and it has the fangs of a lioness. It has made my vine a waste, and my fig tree splinters. It has stripped them bare and cast them away. Their branches have become white.
So Joel is describing a locust invasion here that had struck the land of Israel. Based on this event, Joel describes a nation that will come against Israel like a locust invasion. Look at Joel chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, Jim.
Sound the trumpet in Jerusalem, raise the alarm on my holy mountain. Let everyone tremble in fear, because the day of the Lord is upon us. It is a day of darkness and gloom, a day of thick clouds and deep blackness. Suddenly, like dawn spreading across the mountains, a great and mighty army appears. Nothing like it has been seen before or will ever be seen again. Fire burns in front of them, and the flames follow after them. Ahead of them, the land lies as beautiful as the Garden of Eden. Behind them is nothing but desolation. Not one thing escapes. They look like horses. They charge forward like war horses. Look at them as they leap along the mountaintops. Listen to the noise they make, like the rumbling of chariots, like a roar of fire sweeping across the field of stubble, or like a mighty army moving into battle.
So, look at that picture, if you will. Imagine that picture. Locusts sound like a powerful army coming against the nation of Israel. And again, if you look at verses 4 and 5, they make the connection that the locusts are an army, and that it is a very clear picture. The locusts had the appearance of horses, and they leap like the rumbling of chariots. Locusts were the curse promised by God for Israel's disobedience. Go back to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and look at verses 38 through 42. Isaac?
They shall carry much seed out into the field, and shall gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards, and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine, nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them. Thou shalt have olive trees throughout all thy coast, but thou shalt not anoint thyself with the oil for thine olive shall cast its fruit. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall not go into captivity. All
Is
thy
that
trees
is
and
that
fruit-
Deuteronomy 28?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay,
What?
go ahead. You just haven't finished, I guess.
I'll go back to 42. And thy trees and fruit of thy land shall the locust consume. Is that what you were waiting for?
That's what I was waiting for. Yes, Jack.
Well, everybody don't, city people or people living in cities, a lot of times don't get the locust invasion.
That's true.
And they'll say the year of the locust, because the locust comes every 7 years. They don't hit everywhere, but they'll hit out in the open areas in the country and hit pastures and farm corn or whatever. But, and also when it's all over, you'll find millions of holes in the ground everywhere. We had a little farm in Troy, Missouri when we got hit with them, and it's something to see.
Yeah.
I drove through one in Utah on the salt flats.
Yeah.
The whole freeway was covered with them, man. It looked like the whole freeway it was insane.
Yeah.
And even after cars were going over them, I mean, there were countless. It was disgusting. It was.
Comment, Nola?
They come back out of the
I
ground.
mean, it was there.
They come back out of the ground and
Nola?
There's a movie, The Good Earth, and the scene that they have of the locust was one of the most vivid ones I've ever seen. But what it didn't show was, I didn't know this about locust. In Joel, when you read there, verse 1, there's 4 stages that they're talking of the locust.
Yeah.
It's, before it's locust without wings, that'd be just the beginning. And the put forth little ones, and verse 3 get small wings, and then the 4th is they're matured.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know that about locusts.
How long do you think the lifespan is of a locust?
It can't be very long.
The verses you were reading there, Isaac.
That one season. I think they died. I think they were
5 months.
5 months.
Oh, is it that long?
Yeah, 5 months is their lifespan. And so what we're talking about in Deuteronomy 28 verses 38 through 42 is this torment of locusts was allowed for 5 months because their lifespan is only 5 months, okay? So this seems to be the reason for using this number of months for the duration of the torment. The suffering and torment will not be for a few days, but for the duration of the life of the locust. This attack will only end when the attackers have completed their devastation. The torment, do what?
I just said and they eat everything.
Oh yes, they eat everything. I mean, it's complete devastation.
And they get into your house and in every corner,
Yeah.
wherever they're going through.
Right. So the torment is as painful as the sting of a scorpion, and the suffering will be so severe that people will seek death but will not find it. I believe this suffering represents the Roman siege against Jerusalem from 66 through 70 AD. And I will give an explanation why shortly, if you'll just bear with me on that, okay? Any other comments through verse 10?
It represents something because they didn't eat me up.
Yeah, through verse 6, I should say. Well, let's look at verses 7 through 11. Wanda, chapter 9, verses 7 through 11.
The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle.
All right, so we're continuing here in chapter 9 with the 5th trumpet, which goes through verse 11. and I think we can get through this trumpet. But what we see here, the locusts are described as a powerful army. And many of the descriptions in these verses are similar to what we read in Joel chapter 1, or what we read in Joel chapter 1, verses 4 through 7. Pat, you had that?
Did we read that already, Dale?
I think we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, okay, we did. Yeah, and we also read Joel chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Yeah. So, Revelation is showing us that this is not a literal locust attack. Rather, the locusts represent a terrifying ruling army. Notice that the locusts are wearing gold crowns, showing that they have authority over the earth. This is another reason to see the locusts as the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire in the first century is the world power that dominates and rules over the earth. Look specifically at verses 8 through 10 that Wanda read there. This simply enhances the imagery of fierceness with which this attack will come. And this invasion will be terrible and destructive. Go to Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 27. Yes, Jack?
That kind of, I built a picture in my mind right now about Russia attacking Ukraine.
Yeah,
It's about the same.
it could be very similar, yes. Yeah. Pat, read Jeremiah 51 verse 27 if you have it, please.
Verse 7,
Yeah, Jeremiah 51 verse 27.
27.
Yes.
Okay, here it is. Slay all her bulls, let them go down to the slaughter road to them, for their day has come, the time.
Is that 51 verse 27?
Jeremiah 50. Sorry,
That's okay.
let me get on 51.
I know you just wanted to read an extra verse.
Whoa. 27.
Yes, 51 verse 27.
Set up a banner in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations against her, call the kingdoms together against her. Ararat, meaning, and Ashkenaz,
That's good enough.
appointed general against her, caused the horses to come up, and like the bristling locust.
Okay.
B plus for reading that.
Do what?
She gets B plus for reading that.
No, I'll give her an A plus.
Stumbling over that.
So let's identify the locusts. The locusts, I'm suggesting, represents the Roman Empire and its invasion against Judea and Jerusalem. Go to Revelation chapter 11 and verse 7. I don't have that up there, but I'll read that real quick. Revelation 11 verse 7, if I get turned there, says, when they finish their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. What we're seeing with verse 7 is a parallel image. Okay, it doesn't mention locusts there, but you see the image there. The abyss is open, and we see the beast rising up from the abyss. Revelation chapter 17 and verse 8. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, we'll read all of this a little bit later, but Revelation 17 verse 8 says, the beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not, and yet is. So, what we see in Revelation chapter 17 verse 8 then is it reveals that the beast is what is rising up from the abyss. We see then in Revelation chapter 13 that the beast represents the Roman Empire, and we'll look at that a little bit later. We will see when we get to Revelation chapter 11 and chapter 13 why the book uses the image of the beast for the Roman Empire. Okay? So you'll have to be patient with me on that. But what we need to see at this point is that the locust and the beast represent the same entity, both are unleashed from the abyss. So to validate this point, it is the same entity that is unleashing the locust and the beast. In Revelation chapter 12 and also in chapter 13, we see the dragon unleashing the beast for war. The dragon is identified as Satan. Look specifically at Revelation chapter 12 and verse 9, where it says, "So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceived the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." The beast is the Roman Empire. So now let's go to Revelation chapter 13, and Jack, read verses 1 through 8 for me.
Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. How far did you say that?
Through verse
8.
8.
Okay, so they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth 10 blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world.
Okay, now to fully understand this, we need to go to chapter 17, and Madison, read verses 7 through 11 for me.
But the angel said to me, "Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was, and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet to come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast, that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction."
Okay, now you don't see the name Rome in there or anything, but if you look at that, 7 kings mentioned. So you know it's talking about something, some earthly kingdom here. Yes, Jim, you had a... Oh, you just... Okay. So if you look at Revelation chapter 9 and verse 11, we see here that this fallen star is Abaddon in Hebrew and Apollyon in Greek. Now, I said I don't use those words, but here I go and use those words, don't I? The word Abaddon means destruction, and the word Apollyon means destroyer. He is the one who has unleashed the locust in this judgment. Okay? So I believe that there is no doubt that the destroyer refers to Satan. Satan is the ruler who has fallen to earth, according to Revelation chapter 12 and verses 7 through 9. It confirms the meaning of this image. Further, Qumran community spoke of Abaddon 15 times in their writings. Abaddon is spoken of with Sheol. Sheol is the Hebrew word that means place of the dead, okay? Hades is the Greek word that means place of the dead. So you have the Hebrew and you have the Greek. And So Sheol is tied to Belial. The Apostle Paul used the name Belial to refer to Satan and a fellowship with darkness. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 15. Do what?
Linda?
Where am I? I forget.
Me.
Glenda? Right, second. Go ahead.
And what accord has Christ with
Belial.
Belial, or what part has a believer with an unbeliever?
So, this is where the Apostle Paul used this name Belial to refer to Satan and a fellowship with darkness. Satan is shown unleashing the locust in Revelation chapter 9 then. And Satan is shown as unleashing the beast in Revelation chapter 13, and in Revelation chapter 9, Satan is called Abaddon and Apollyon. In Revelation chapter 12, Satan is called the dragon. In Revelation chapter 9, the Roman Empire is described as locust. In Revelation chapter 13, the Roman Empire is described as the beast. Now, I know that's a lot of chapters that, and you'll just have to go back and read those, but we'll look at those as time goes on. But finally, in Revelation chapter 6, verse 8, we observe that the method of the killing was the way God promised to judge Israel for disobedience. And we'll go to Leviticus next Sunday and look at that, as well as Ezekiel and Jeremiah. So hang with me on that. We'll get to it. Any questions? Any answers?
I think it was wrong.
You said it was the Roman siege of Judea and what?
Let me go back here. I said, here we go. All right. Now, what was the question again, Glenda?
You had said it was the Roman siege of Judea, and you said one other.
Oh, yeah, Roman siege of Judea and I think Jerusalem.
I thought that's what you said, but I was.
Yeah, Judea and Jerusalem. Okay.
Okay, good job, thank you.
Well, it's you're getting into a lot of meat. That's for sure.
You left the milk a while ago.
Way over here first.
Vegas and then California.
All right.